The candles trembled against the crystal glasses, their reflections dancing across the mahogany table. Laughter rolled like soft thunder until my mother's voice sliced through it all. "Here's to Elena," she said, raising her glass. $100,000 for her studies in Rome. Everyone clapped. Forks hovered midair. The air thickened with praise and perfume. I smiled, small and polite, the kind you give when you already know your place. Then I asked, quietly, barely moving my lips, "What about me?" She didn't even glance up. "You? You don't need help, Marcus. You need drive." And just like that, the laughter resumed, skipping over me like a missed beat in a song. That was the last family dinner I ever attended. I remember the flicker of the candles against the window, the hum of the chandelier, and how the room smelled faintly of burnt rosemary. I remember my father nodding, proud of the money, proud of Elena, proud of the family name. I remember my mother's pearls, glinting as if approval itself was jewelry. And I remember realizing, at that exact moment, that love in that house was conditional, measured, traded. Later that night, I stood by my car and watched the rain bead across the windshield, whispering against the glass like it knew something I didn't yet. That silence could be sharper than any insult. When I finally drove away, I didn't look back. I didn't even check the rearview mirror. That was the night I stopped asking for fairness. The night I started planning my exit. If you've ever sat at a table where your worth was up for debate, you'll understand what I mean. And if this part of the story hits somewhere deep, don't go yet, because this journey, it's only just beginning. Hit like, subscribe, and stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll see exactly what silence can build. When I was 10, birthdays felt like borrowed sunlight. Elena's candles always came with cameras, speeches, and an audience. Mine came with a recycled card and a pat on the back. "Be independent, Marcus," Mom would say. "Don't rely on anyone." I remember that word independent like it was a medal I didn't ask for. There was a bus driver named Carl. Every morning, he'd wave as I climbed in, my backpack heavier than my dreams. The seat beside me was always empty, but I pretended it was reserved for someone who cared. Carl never asked questions, but once, when I nearly fell asleep against the window, he said quietly, "You'll build something, kid, I can tell." I didn't believe him then. I just nodded and stared at the fog outside. At home, everything was performance. Mom measured love in achievements. Dad measured it in profit margins. When Elena joined the Model UN, Mom called it leadership. When I joined a robotics club, she called it tinkering. "People don't notice wires, Marcus," she said. "They notice presence." She wanted a son who stood under the spotlight. Instead, she got one who built it. I became good at invisibility. Fixing Wi-Fi, editing Elena's essays, testing her presentations while she rehearsed with friends. Mom said I was helpful. Dad said I was practical. Neither of those words ever sounded like love. The first time I actually won something, a local coding challenge, I printed the certificate myself. The email said congratulations, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I showed Dad while he adjusted the sprinklers. He glanced once, squinted at the paper, and said, "That's a start." Then he went back to the sprinklers. That night, Elena posted about her upcoming Rome exchange program. My phone buzzed nonstop, family group chat filled with heart emojis and champagne gifts. Not one of them was for me. So I learned something important. If no one claps for you, clap for yourself, quietly. Because one day, that sound will echo louder than any applause they ever gave someone else. The night of the Rome dinner stayed with me like a watermark, invisible until the right kind of light hit it. After that night, I didn't argue, I didn't shout, I just got quiet. When silence becomes your second language, you start hearing things differently. The creak of your apartment floor feels like resilience. The hum of your laptop fan sounds like a heartbeat. My studio apartment in downtown Portland was barely the size of our old dining room. The heater clicked every 10 minutes. The walls smelled faintly of detergent and burnt toast from next door. But for the first time in my life, it was mine. I made coffee in chipped mugs, brewed strong enough to hide exhaustion, and opened a new folder on my laptop titled Life Build V1.0. Inside it, goals, projects, savings. That's all I had. 3 files and 1 rule. Document everything. Because when people leave holes in your story, data fills them better than apologies ever will. By day, I worked as a barista, fixing the cafe Wi-Fi whenever it glitched. By night, I coded under a yellow desk lamp that flickered more than it shone. The rain against the window became my metronome, steady, relentless. A few months later, I got a part-time IT job at a small logistics startup downtown. 12 people, fluorescent lights, whiteboards scribbled with impossible ideas. But when everyone left, that office became my lab. That's where I met Ravi, the project manager with a quiet grin and coffee breath strong enough to power a machine. He leaned over my desk one night and said, "You're optimizing delivery routes, right?" I nodded, still typing. "Just for fun." He laughed. "Then make it profitable fun." We turned that small side project into a prototype. He called it Routewise. I called it Proof. When it worked, when the app predicted deliveries 40% faster, Ravi said, "We're presenting this next week." I didn't sleep for 3 days straight. And when the investors nodded in approval, I felt something I hadn't felt since childhood. Validation that wasn't borrowed. That project became my language. Every line of code was a sentence. Every solved bug was a paragraph of healing. I didn't realize it then, but I was building more than software. I was rebuilding myself. Rootwise took off faster than I could process. 1 month we were debugging in a shared workspace. The next, we were renting 2 entire floors downtown. Whiteboards turned into glass walls. Late nights turned into investor dinners. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the quiet one in the room. I felt like the architect. Ravi liked to joke that I ran on coffee and revenge. Maybe he wasn't wrong. I never posted about the success, never bragged, never told anyone from home. Silence had built this, and I wasn't about to ruin it with noise. Still, sometimes in that glass office, as the rain tapped steady rhythms against the windows, I'd think of the night my mother said I didn't deserve help. I didn't hate her for it anymore. I just understood what she'd really meant. Help is control. And I'd finally learned to live without both. My therapist, Dr. Clara Monroe, once told me, "Marcus, you were never unworthy. You were just unprofitable to them." That hit like lightning. She was right. My family didn't reward goodness. They rewarded returns. So I made usefulness my own currency. Every feature I built, every graph I optimized. It wasn't about spite anymore. It was about ownership. 2 years in, Ravi and I signed the papers that made Rootwise Labs official. Co-founders, equal partners. The contract was printed on heavy ivory paper that smelled faintly of ink and promise. When I signed my name, my hand didn't even shake. I'd never forgotten the way my father's voice used to flatten hope into numbers. He'd say, "Everything's an investment, son. You just need to choose wisely." So I did. I invested in solitude, in sleepless nights, in learning how to build a life that couldn't be repossessed. Years blurred into expansions, new clients, and quiet victories. And one evening, while cleaning out my office drawer, I found something small. An old folded note I'd written after that dinner. It said, "Call Mom," crossed out so hard the paper nearly tore. I stared at it for a long time. Then I folded it back neatly, filed it under archived lessons, and closed the drawer. Peace doesn't always roar. Sometimes it hums quietly behind a locked office door. It happened on a Sunday morning. The sky was soft gray, Portland quiet under a curtain of mist. I was making breakfast with Emma, the kind of calm, laughter-filled morning I used to think only existed for other people, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something made me swipe. "Marcus?" The voice cracked between syllables. "It's me, Elena." For a moment, it was like hearing a ghost use my name. She was crying. "I just drove past a house by the river. Your name's on the gate. Do you really live there?" Outside, the sprinklers ticked in rhythm with her silence. "What are you really asking, Elena?" I said. Her breath shook. "Why do you have that life?" The call dropped before I could answer. By the afternoon, the messages began. Mom, Dad, even my aunt, who once told me ambition was arrogance. Their voices filled the voicemail box with the same familiar tone, the one they used when they needed something wrapped in love. Mom's message came first, polished, performative. "Elena told us the most surprising thing, sweetheart. Let's talk, okay? Families should stick together." Then Dad's voice, slower, heavier. "Marcus, it's your father. Let's be adults about this. Your mother meant well. Maybe it's time to put things behind us." That word again, family. It always arrived like an invoice, never a gift. By evening, a letter came through courier. Heavy cream paper, perfect cursive, Margaret Dawson. The first line pretended to care. "Elena is expecting. You'll be an uncle. Maybe it's time to reconnect." Then came the true purpose. "Your father's business is struggling. The house roof needs repair. We thought perhaps, since you're doing well." The last line twisted the knife beautifully. "I know you're not a cold person." I folded it once, then again, and dropped it straight into the trash. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger. Just clarity, the kind that doesn't shout, just settles in like truth. I opened my old therapy journal and wrote one new line. "They don't miss me. They miss the role I used to play." 3 days later, I sent 2 letters. To Mom, if contact is to continue, 3 rules. No money, no guilt, no surprise visits. I don't need apologies. I need distance. To Dad, you once called love an investment. Consider this my final withdrawal. His reply was a text. "Meet me Thursday, 10 a.m., Bridge Cafe." The rain smelled metallic that morning. He arrived on time, coat pressed, eyes dimmer. "You look different," he said. "Better or worse, I asked. He shrugged. Different is fine. He tried to justify everything. Mom's cruelty, the favoritism, the money. We did our best. Parents make mistakes. I looked him in the eye. It wasn't a mistake, Dad. It was math. He blinked. Math? You invested 100,000 in image, I said softly. I built value out of nothing. The difference is honesty. He didn't argue. He just stared into his coffee, steam fading into the air like the last illusion between us. When I left, I said, You don't owe me anything. That's the point. The invitation came on thick. Gold-edged paper. The Portland Innovation Gala, honoring local tech and education pioneers. Rootwise Labs was a sponsor that year. We were funding scholarships for students in underserved schools, the kind of kids who reminded me of who I used to be, invisible, but burning quietly with potential. Emma helped me straighten my tie that night. You nervous? She asked. I smiled. No, just ready. The hall shimmered in gold and glass, filled with applause, perfume, and the kind of people who clink glasses just to prove they belong. That's when I saw them. My parents, older but still performing. Mom in pearls, Dad in his familiar gray suit. And beside them, Elena, her belly soft beneath a pale blue dress, eyes flicking around nervously. They approached like a memory on rewind. Mom's voice was honey dipped in control. We just wanted to say how proud we are of you, Marcus. And remember, success means giving back. She smiled. Your father still needs that roof fixed, and Elena's got a baby on the way. I didn't respond. I just nodded toward the stage. Excuse me, I said. A stage assistant handed me a pearl-white envelope, the one I'd prepared days ago. When they called my name, the spotlight found me. I walked up to the microphone, my heartbeat steady, my palms dry. Tonight, I began, I'd like to make a personal contribution. The room hushed. Rootwise Labs will donate $100,000 to fund scholarships for young dreamers, especially those told they don't deserve help. A murmur swept the hall. Then applause. Slow at first, then thunderous. I looked straight at my mother. You once called it an investment, I said softly. So do I. Her smile cracked. Dad froze mid-step, staring at the oversized check glowing under the light. $100,000, Marcus Dawson. When the applause faded, I walked off stage and into the cool night. The rain had started again, thin, steady, cleansing. I let it hit my face and didn't bother running for cover. No cameras, no statements, just rain and silence. My oldest companions. The next morning, the city woke up wrapped in mist. I stood barefoot on the deck of my river house, the water silver beneath the dawn. Inside, Emma brewed coffee, the smell of roasted beans mixed with rain-soaked air. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Yeah, finally. She smiled. You looked lighter last night. I'm not lighter, I said. Just finished. Later, when the house was quiet again, I walked into my office. The glass framed the water like a living painting. On the wall hung one small frame. Inside it, my old bus pass from childhood. The one they gave me instead of a birthday gift. Underneath, I'd written, Broken roots, better roots. I opened my journal, the same one I'd once filled with hurt and equations of love that never balanced, and wrote my final entry. They taught me that love had to be earned. I learned that peace doesn't. A heron crossed the river, wings beating slow and steady against the morning fog. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't running from silence anymore. I was living inside it, comfortably. If you've ever been told you're not enough, remember this. You don't need their permission to build your own version of enough. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't anger, it's peace. And hey, if this story reached you somewhere deep, don't scroll yet. Hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe, because the next story, it might just be the one that helps you find your voice again.